Alright everybody, first thing Monday morning we're going to come in here and get the fish room woken up. Get the overhead light turned on first. Start having a little look around, make sure everybody's doing okay. I know you can't see him, but Butterbean is right over here in this corner. He looks fine. And I don't see any of the crabs out in the crab tank, but we got a switch down here that turns on both of these tanks. Now you get a little better look at Butterbean back there. Somewhere in here is a couple of orange sailfin mollies. There's one of them. They usually hang out near the surface in the morning. There's the other, so they're both still doing okay. 29 miscellaneous. I just added some longfin black skirt tetras in here. So far so good, haven't lost any of them. Not seeing any nipping on my angelfish or any aggression or anything like that, so everything looks okay in this tank. Now I recently put a new LED on my gourami tank here, my T-bar tank, and then my native tank down at the end of the room is also plugged in on the same strip. So now all three of these tanks come on at the same time, and with that LED it's just instant on. I've got a plug strip underneath here. Just hit the button and turn it on, and pow, it just lights up like that. So that's another thing I like about the LEDs, is they're just instant on at full color. When you turn on the fluorescent tubes, it generally takes them a good 10 or 15 minutes to really warm up and get up to their full intensity and their full brightness. So everybody looks okay in that tank. I don't see any casualties. I don't even see any dead neons in there, so we're looking good on that tank. So far everybody looks okay in this tank. I did find a dead neon in here yesterday. I put a bunch in recently and I did lose one, so not terribly surprised about that. But everything looks okay now. Get my black ghost knife fish tank. Just did a good big water change on this tank last night. And I think I'm going to need to get in here soon and change up this cave a little bit. This is the main cave where the black ghost lives. And it does go back here, and there's a little bit of more depth to it than it first appears. But I did see him come out. He comes out of this side area and goes right over here into this little cave system. And when he was coming out, he kind of had to do this sort of little wiggly maneuver before he got out. And so that's the first sign that I've seen so far indicating that he's getting a little tight for space in there. So it was a pretty clear indication that he was getting tight for space in there, though. So I think we're going to have to make some adjustments to that here in the very near future. My native tank here got a big water change yesterday, and every time I do a major water change or any kind of major work, you never know what you're going to find the next morning. You might shock somebody or change the water parameters that you didn't know about, and you might always, cause some kind of issue. But so far so good. I don't see any problems to everybody. My spotted tilapia is still doing okay down there in the bottom corner, and then this whole side of the room is on one plug strip back here. So I'll just hit that, and this whole side lights up. So I am really liking the new fluorescent lights that I've got on my other two tanks that we just looked at. And this tank has just a regular old shop lamp. It's the standard 4-foot with the T8 tubes in it, and being that it's only 4 feet long and the tank is 6, that gives me 1 foot at either end, and I keep one of these little dome lights at either end just to cap it off. And of course, when I want, I can always just move the light forward, and then that lights up the bottom of the tank differently, changes where the shadows fall and all that. So I could do more or less the same thing, except instead of having that fluorescent tube in there that gives me this sort of appearance, I could put one of the LEDs on there that gives me this much brighter, sparkly sort of appearance, and you get that nice shimmer from the ripples in the water. I really like it a lot. I got it on this tank too. For those of you that follow along, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you that don't, I actually still have the box right there on the floor. It's a low-budget shop light LED made by Lights of America, and they sell them at the Wally World for $38. So that's just a great deal for what I'm getting. The problem is it's still $40, and I just dropped $40 on this tank. I just dropped $40 on this tank. I'm not made of money. I can't just keep putting $40 on top of each one of these tanks just because I like it. So I also want to wait and see how my plants do over time. I want to wait and see if I develop any algal blooms or anything, because the quality of light that comes out of an LED is not the same as the quality of light that comes out of other light sources. They all have their pros and cons, and with the LEDs, it's just going to take some time to find out whether we've got you know, a good high quality light with a good spectrum in there, or we've got a lower quality. I'll go into more detail and talk about that at some point here in the future. I'm going to talk a little bit more about LEDs and how they work and how they produce light and the wavelengths of light and all that kind of stuff. But the long story short is we're going to have to wait a little while to find out what impact it's going to have. I suspect that all my low lighting need plants, all my Java and Anubias, all the stuff that doesn't really require, you know, high intensity lighting, I think that'll all be fine. My real concern is going to be whether or not we get any kind of algal blooms or algal growths. Algae, unlike most plants that do best with lots of blues and reds in the light spectrum, the algae actually manages to use up a lot of the yellows and greens out of the middle spectrum that other plants don't use. So if you've got a cheap LED that, whether your eyes pick it up or not, if it's producing a lot of those yellows and green wavelengths in there, that's really conducive to algae growing. So if it turns out that that's the case, I may pass on buying more of them, but if not, I'd love to see one on this tank. I do have some LEDs down at this end that give me that sparkle and shimmer, but those are just cheap little outdoor floodlight units. These are also repurposed and were never intended to be on top of an aquarium, but they look good as far as I'm concerned, and for the $8 or $10 a piece that they cost, they give me a nice sparkly light, and I wouldn't put them on my entire tank as I have in the past. And you know, I did wind up problems with lots